Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Great Western Mining Corporation investor presentation. Throughout this investor presentation, you'll be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and provide responses where it's appropriate to do so. These will be available via your Investor Meet Company dashboard, and we will notify you by email when they are ready for your review. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. We'll also share a poll which will follow the conclusion of the presentation. I'd now like to hand over to Brian Hall, Chairman from Great Western Mining. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for attending this first ever presentation by Great Western on Investor Meet Company. It's been a little while in the coming, this meeting, because we thought it'd be more useful to wait until we had some drilling results and some assay results from drilling, and they took forever. And so now we're less constrained in what we can say, and so this is our first shot. I'm going to turn off my own video because I don't have very much bandwidth here, and I'm worried that when I get into the slides, things will go fuzzy. So I'm just going to become an audio person for the time being and just switch that off. We put out a presentation. We put out a presentation this morning, which I hope you've had a chance to look at. Rather short notice, I'm afraid. It's been on our site. It's a fairly long and chunky presentation, 38 slides. I don't propose to go through the whole thing word for word because everyone can read, and a lot of it is just a background to the company and its properties, and there's an appendix which really explains everything about everything in the company. So I'll deal with that. I'm just going to really concentrate on about 15 slides, and so I'm going to move now to slide number 4, which is our overview of the company. And there you'll notice right at the very top, bang on time, right at the very beginning is a mistake. We get a company name wrong. How about that? Someone's head's going to have to roll, but unfortunately probably mine. We are in fact called Great Western Mining Corporation PLC, and we'll correct it. I only spotted this about 10 minutes ago, so I didn't have a chance. Just to tell you a little bit about the company, lots of you know all about the company, but there'll be just a few that don't, so I thought I would just give a little bit of background. We're a mineral exploration and development company exploiting precious metals and base metals in Nevada. We have a gold exploration target of 500,000 to 1.5 million ounces from multiple gold prospects. We have ongoing projects to produce gold and silver through processing spoil heaps and other material. Our acreage is around 15,000 acres, about 60 square kilometers of mining concessions. We're in the Walker Lane Trend, which is a prolific producing area. And on copper, we have drilled 5,000 meters, and we have an indicated and inferred mineral resource of 4.3 million tons of copper, 4.3 million tons at 0.45% copper. And we're looking at the moment for a development partner. Our shares are traded on AIM under the symbol GWMO and on Euronext Growth in Dublin on the symbol 8GW. The shares are very widely held. We have no corporate debt. I'll just move to the next slide. Which is properties and targets. Now, you'll see that we have a list of properties we are working on here. The ones that are in bold script, Mineral Jackpot, Rockhouse Group, and the Olympic Gold Project are the ones that are our current focus of attention. You'll see that we've got some fairly large targets. These are targets, not resources. To make sure of that. We're not claiming to have these as resources. This is what we are aiming to find, not what we have found. The Olympic Gold Project, you'll see, is much the largest, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the Olympic Gold Project as we go through. But you can see we've got a number of properties that we are focusing on. Our company's strategy is to prioritize the exploration of gold and silver on existing license acreage to establish a commercial resource. We are fast-tracking the exploitation of precious metals to achieve early gold and silver sales, and we're going to expand, or we are expanding the search for precious metals into new areas, for instance, the Olympic Gold Project, which is a new arrival. We want to develop substantial copper potential through introducing new industry partners with access to technology and large-scale finance, and that is work ongoing. So just to give you a little bit of background on gold, silver, and copper in Nevada. I'm sorry, I put the slide. Getting to move the slide here. Just bear with me a second. On this slide, there's a little map which is fairly hard to read, which you can see. The outline is Mineral County, Nevada, which is our base of operations. You will see at sort of 9 o'clock on this slide a little group of dots, which are existing properties, and then some way to the west-northwest, a single dot, which is our Olympic Gold concession. All our assets are located in Mineral County, Nevada. And they include old gold and silver mine workings, which we plan to rework with modern technology. Mineral County is a very rich in gold, silver, and lots of other minerals as well. It's not called Mineral County for nothing. And all our licenses lie within the Walker Lane Trend, which you can see is this yellow sort of horizontal diagonal slope across the map. Prolific gold and silver discoveries have been made in the past on our properties. Some of the topography is very mountainous, and without benefit of modern equipment, has in some cases left large areas underexplored and underexploited, which we propose to take advantage of. Great Western's 8 distinct concessions have the potential for gold and silver in the short term, and substantial copper development in the longer term. Just moving on to the next slide, excuse me, yes, I am on the right side. I want to tell you, before I get into Trafalgar Hill itself, which is what the slide is actually about, under work in progress for exploration, I want to just give you a little introduction to the Olympic Gold project, because it's a very important part of our portfolio. We acquired an option to purchase the Olympic Gold property, which is about 800 acres, May, June last year. It's an option to purchase, which we make an annual payment, and when we've made 5 annual payments, the last one being at the end of year 4, then the property is ours. If we want to accelerate that, we can pay any time and own it straight away. Alternatively, if we are unhappy with Olympic Gold, which I can tell you we're not unhappy, then we have the right to walk away without further obligations. So it's a very interesting arrangement, and we make a payment, and in return there is a small royalty payable to the vendor on any future production. Now, the work at the Olympic has several prospects on it, quite a number of prospects on it, which we haven't handled them all. But the core to the whole story of Olympic Gold is the OMCO mine. And OMCO, I don't know what it stands for, but I imagine OMCO was Olympic Mining Corporation or something similar. But the OMCO mine was a prolific gold mine. It wasn't a huge gold mine, but it was a very high grade and profitable gold mine, which produced gold until the 1940s and was then abandoned. It produced gold from a west to east running vein, and I'm saying west to east in very rough, and not just one vein, several veins. And mining stopped when the vein met a fault, and nobody actually crossed the fault and decided to try and extend the vein beyond that, or extend exploration for the vein beyond that. Who knows why? It might have been a low gold price, could have been a number of reasons. But anyway, gold mining at Olympic Gold stopped in the 1940s when that vein reached the fault. So one of our principal objectives is to try and find a continuation of the fault on the eastern side, of the vein on the eastern side of the fault. And so that is our main objective, but there are other prospects we are also exploring on Olympic Gold. And the one I have on this slide, which we've drilled this year, is the Trafalgar Hill prospect. We've drilled 6 holes, totaling 31,352 meters this summer. We had reportable gold grades in all of the holes. We had 2 holes with very good grades. Our best intercept was 8.9 grams a ton gold in a shallow zone. Just to explain how this works, for our own work we've done with magnetometry, we find that there is a shallow zone and a deeper zone. The shallow zone appears to be more present in the south of the holes we've drilled. The deeper zone trends further north. The deeper zone is potentially bigger, but also potentially lower grades of gold. So we have actually hit both zones, but to explore the deeper zone further, we'll have to drill some more deep holes further north. But we think we'll also need to do an IP survey, an induced polarization survey, to better target the areas before we do any further drilling in the deep zones. Meantime, the shallow zones, we would like to follow them to the south, and we're planning to drill 5 holes, totaling just over 1,000 meters. You'll see they're about 200 meters a hole, so they're reasonably shallow holes. And that's in our program, and it's an extremely interesting project, and we expect to get on with that as soon as possible. We're busy permitting the drilling right now, and we have permit applications in, and we have all the locations fixed. So that is that is the Trafalgar Hill prospect at Olympic Gold. So if I just move now to the next slide, which is the Omco mine area. Now, this gets to the heart of the Olympic Gold project. We have drilled 4 holes, 2 of them to the east of the north-south fault, and 2 of them to the south and west of the mine, so on the western side of the fault. We thought we were drilling 3 holes to the east and 1 to the west. In fact, the fault didn't go quite where we thought, but that didn't really matter for this purpose. The 2 holes we drilled to the east didn't hit the vein, but what they did do is establish through chemical analysis that we are definitely in the same zone of mineralization as the vein. So we have more holes to drill to the east of the fault, which we propose to do in the next phase of drilling. We're going to drill some to the northeast of where we've drilled already, and then we're going to drill a couple of holes absolutely dead opposite where the original Omco mine vein ends when it reaches the fault. So that's really our program for that part of it. We're also going to do some more drilling to the south and west of the Omco mine, because as well as crossing the fault, we also think there's a good possibility that we'll find some interesting extensions to the mine on the side that's already been mined as well. So we've got two parts to this program on the Omco mine area to the east of the fault and to the south and west of the fault. And so that is, we propose to drill up to 13 holes in the next phase. We've already drilled 4, we're going to drill 13 more at the next phase of drilling. So this is a big priority for us, and something which is very important for the company, we believe. I'll now just move on to the 3rd prospect we've drilled on Olympic Gold, which is the West Ridge prospect. West Ridge is a smaller looking prospect, but it's been mined before. We drilled a hole to 152 meters. We didn't get any reportable gold grades, but the geologist's conclusion, having drilled it, is that we should probably go deeper, because it's beginning to look as if there's a deeper epithermal vein, which will be tested by a follow-up deeper hole. And you'll see that the hole we're planning to drill, you can see at the top of the slide, is going to be 226 meters as opposed to 150 meters, 2 meters for the one we've drilled already. So we're hoping to hit a deeper vein, but this is a fairly speculative. We're going to drill 1 more hole on that. So that's really where we stand on the Olympic Gold project. We've drilled 3/4 prospects. We've apart from West Ridge, we've had notifiable gold, reportable gold in 3 of them, and it has really opened up the way for the follow-up drilling program, which we're really looking forward to getting into. The final bit of exploration work in progress is we're now moving back to away from Olympic Gold and back to our core area, to the Rockhouse group, and sometimes known as the RH group, as an abbreviation. The Rockhouse group has 3 prospect areas: the Northern Slate Zone, the Eastern Shear Zone, and the Southern Alteration Zone. Now, this area has never been drilled before. It's virgin acreage. It's very speculative. We identified mineralization from studying satellite imagery. We have done a lot of soil sampling, a lot of desk work. We've done some trenching. And at the beginning of this year, we decided that we should really risk drilling some holes on this, even though it's fairly high risk of pure exploration. So we decided we'd drill the Southern Alteration Zone, and we budgeted 8 holes. In fact, we only, for various reasons, which I won't go into because it's sort of fairly detailed, but for various reasons, we only drilled 6. But far from being one of these high-risk things that doesn't work, we actually encountered gold at a fairly shallow depth in multiple holes. with best intercepts of 8.02 grams a ton in one hole and 2.2 grams a ton in another. So you can see that the grade of gold we got at the southern alteration zone is pretty much equivalent to what we got at Trafalgar Hill. So we were very pleased with that indeed, because the story is now, there's definitely now a gold story there which needs follow-up drilling. We'll probably drill it after Mineral Jackpot, but it's we're planning to drill 5 more holes, totaling about 725 meters. And what we're looking for is we're looking to test a potential increase in zonal thickness and grade where narrow structures coalesce together along either a long strike or down dip. So we're just trying to follow the leads we've got and see if we can establish a good resource of gold on the southern alteration zone. So we've now that's our fourth slide and our fourth piece of drilling we've done this year, and I think it's been a pretty good result. We're happy with the results. We haven't found bonanza gold, but then whoever did with their first drilling campaign, the company has never drilled for gold and silver before. It's drilled for copper, but it's never drilled for gold and silver. It's been a long time coming, and I think it's been a pretty good campaign. And I'm happy with the results and really looking forward to the next stage, which of course will be important in following up what we've already done. I just wanted to move on to another slide, which I called early stage exploration, and just to have a look at the other things we're working on, which haven't actually got to the drilling stage, or have got to the drilling stage but haven't yet been drilled. The Olympic Gold project, we need to conduct the IP survey I previously mentioned on the deep zone at Trafalgar Hill. We'll do that as soon as we can get a contractor to become available. They're very hard to find at the moment. They're all very busy, I should say. And that survey will also be carried out in conjunction with a survey over the East Mine group, which is lower down this list, which I'll come to in a moment. So we have that still to do to try and trace the deep prospect on the Trafalgar Hill prospect. Mineral Jackpot, there are roughly 5 old gold mines on Mineral Jackpot, of which one is actually called Mineral Jackpot. They were always mined historically as separate mines. We think after we have conducted soil surveys that actually we can make these continuous, so that actually there is one large mine area, not 5 separate ones. So we've kind of joined them up, and we also, by sampling, have extended the principal vein on one of them to the southeast for a fair distance. So we're actually following a vein which we think is going to enlarge the size of the whole prospect. So we reckon that we have doubled the potential mineralization on this area. Now these are old mines, of course, and they were worked in the 1890s up to probably about 1920, all done by hand, very few modern tools. Extraordinary effort, because it's a very mountainous area. When you think that these people drilled without the benefit of any modern equipment and machinery and science and so forth. We've done ground-based magnetic surveys over Mineral Jackpot. We're also planning to do the more difficult areas with a drone-based survey, because some of the areas are difficult. Just to give you a little bit of an example of how this works in practice, when our team was doing soil sampling, they were trying to follow lines through from one prospect to another, and there was a little bit of a gap, and they didn't seem to have joined one up. And on further inquiry, it turned out the reason they hadn't done the soil sample is that the point they got to on their soil line, they suddenly were faced with a 200-foot cliff. So you get an idea of just how mountainous and difficult this is. It's not an easy area, but it's likely to be a very prolific area. So that is Mineral Jackpot, and of course is where we have spoil heaps, which I'm going to come to later. This is the spoil heaps which we're planning to process. So just to move down to the Rockhouse group, where we've drilled already on the southern alteration zone, we're proposing another infill soil and rock chip sampling program at the eastern shear zone. We're going to leave the northern slate area for the time being, but there's certainly some more work to be done on the eastern shear zone. And then we go down to the M4 copper target. Now, of course, we haven't drilled for copper for quite a few years now, since 2018. But we have we do have an intercept we would like to drill. It's relatively shallow, relatively inaccessible, but should be fairly straightforward, provided we get a suitable rig up there. The that may unlock the secret to a larger potential copper resource. So that is something that is definitely worth doing. And we decided we'd do it while we had a rig working in the area. Now, earlier in the year, we signed up a small man-portable coring rig. This is really a small, really a tiny rig to do this work, only drilling maybe 100, 150 meters. We got a little caught up because we had the rig installed up there in April, and then the drillers for the main program at Olympic Gold brought the drilling program forward. We didn't have enough personnel, so we left the rig there. In fact, it's still there. But we subsequently went back, and we found the small coring rig is a very useful tool and fine for drilling to the depth we needed to go, except that at M4 we found we had a very hard rock surface which we really couldn't penetrate with the small rig. So we tried all sorts of solutions to try and to achieve that, and we haven't been successful. So we've decided not to drill M4 with a coring rig. We can't get a rig such as the rig we drilled Olympic Gold with up to that height. It's a rather steep, difficult slope. But we have identified a small reverse circulation rig which works as a tracked as opposed to tired vehicle, which will go up there, and we're waiting for a slot on that. It's working at the moment, and as soon as that's free, we want to take that up there to this fully permitted concession, and we'll drill 1 or 2 holes to see what we can find on the M4 copper target, which will be interesting. But it's a little bit of an add-on to our main program, but it'll be these things are worth doing if you can, because it may prove to have a very interesting result. So we'll see. The JS group is a very early stage exploration area. We've got a soil survey that's been planned for some time. We'll probably only do it when we're waiting on equipment for something else, because it's not our main priority, but it's something that long term could be interesting for us. Dropping down to the east side mine, this is where we're going to shoot the induced polarization survey when we can get equipment in conjunction with Trafalgar Hill. It's early stage exploration, but the geologists believe that there's a lot of potential for copper there. It's a little apart from the rest of the assets. Very interesting area, and we'll get to that in due course. And finally on this, the Huntoon Valley. Those of you who have been with the company for some time will recall that we had an agreement called the Huntoon Valley Cooperation Agreement with a local company called Crown Point Resources. Nothing very much happened there. We did some work, but not a lot, and it was inconclusive. The agreement lapsed. We went back to drilling for copper on M2, and nothing really happened. The owners of Crown Point, we've talked to them in the last few weeks. They are very keen to reactivate the Crown Point cooperation, the Huntoon Valley Cooperation Agreement. We have our senior geologist traveling out this week, and depending on his schedule, we'll see if we can do some work on that. And we may even do some sampling and so forth of cuttings from drilling that's been done in the past. So the Huntoon Valley is an interesting area, and it may at some stage come to life again. It's not on our immediate priority, but it's something that we very much have in mind. So that really deals with the gold, the gold and silver. Let me just go on to the copper briefly, because it's something that we do get a lot of questions about. We drilled approximately 5,000 meters for copper and spent a lot of shareholders' money on this. As I say, we've already established a reasonable inferred resource. It needs to be a much bigger resource to be a commercial mine, and that means, of course, a lot more money for drilling. We saw a situation back in 2019 where we could have gone on drilling for copper for another 5 years and tried to raise another 10, 15 million dollars or pounds or whatever, and still not be there. And it just seemed too slow in this world for a small company to be doing that. So that's really why we parked the copper and decided that we will go for the slightly lower hanging fruit, which is the great potential for gold and silver. But that doesn't mean that that copper is not an asset worth having. It most certainly is, and we're looking for a strong industry partner to participate in establishing a significant copper resource on this claim. And we're in touch with a number of companies who are known to be interested in the area. Big companies tend to move rather slowly, but it's something that we are working on. Can't be sure when we will get a result, but we are looking for a partner to do that. We need to have a good sized partner and not a small one. As I said, the 2 interim holes we're drilling on M4, they may open up the story a little bit, which will make it more interesting. So the objective of drilling those wells really is to is to add a little bit to the copper story, which is a good story anyway, but the more we can add to it, the better. So I can now move to my next slide, which is, we've now already moved from exploration to precious metals processing. We've made a lot of significant strides over the last couple of years in exploring for precious metals, and the exploration drilling has yielded some promising results, and I think they offer an exciting future for the company. Nevertheless, new gold mines are not developed overnight. They take time to bring into production, and we have the advantage of a lot of surface-located spoil heaps, tailings, etc., which offers a potentially faster interim route to first revenues. We operate in an area that's full of old gold and silver mines from the past, and the large volumes of surface material do not require to be mined again. They're already mined. So as long as we can establish a good and effective and profitable project for developing the spoil heaps, the surface heaps, then we have a very good chance of developing a revenue-earning business before we would ever get a proper gold mine into production, which of course is our slightly longer-term aim. So we're taking advantage of this situation to exploit all these assets as soon as we can, but we're taking care to ensure that the projects are optimized and combined where possible, because we want to maximize the economic returns. The industry has a history of people that embark on new projects and lose a lot of money and bitterly regret it, and I think we're determined not to be one of those. We want to make sure that whatever we do really does work, and so it doesn't always. It requires a bit of patience and a bit of thinking and rethinking, but we're working on that, and it's a significant resource for the company, which we think will be valuable sooner rather than later. So just to move to the next slide, which is mineral jackpot, precious metals reprocessing. If I can run through this, in late 2020, we were able to bring a load of spoil heap material off the mountain at Mineral Jackpot, and we were able to produce a small doré bar made up of gold, silver, and other minerals. We said we'd do it by the end of the year. We did it by the end of the year, and we proved the concept. This was done in an extremely small laboratory belonging to a contractor, not in a main laboratory. It was done at the very end of the year, and so in a way that worked. It wasn't a commercial amount, but we were able actually to see that we could produce precious metals from the spoil heaps. But at the same time, and really in a way more significant than that, is that we shipped a load of 135 kilograms from the same loadout. So we air freighted to the UK and we put it into a laboratory for 4 months, and it was tested and tested and tested in a very specialized manner, and that gave us some very interesting results. Up to the point that we put that material into the lab, we had assumed that what we'd be looking at would be a cyanide leaching project. Now, cyanide leaching is fine. It needs to be of some scale to work, and ours is relatively small scale. It also requires a lot of environmental, hoops to be jumped through. It's not something you can do. It can be done, but it's a lot of work, and it's quite expensive and so forth. And slightly to our surprise, we found that the material we put through the lab wasn't really suitable for cyanide leaching anyway, and that the best yields we would get from it would come from a gravity separation, which is a very much simpler operation, less environmentally damaging, and something that could be done much more quickly. So that was really what was surprising and encouraging. And we took on a consultant metallurgist, and he's done a lot of work for us, and he's and still is, and he developed, in conjunction with us, he developed a commercial project and designed a project, which is really, it's a ready-to-go project, but it's kind of modular, and you can add things to, you can take things off, but it's a ready-to-go project, and it's complete. His design was entirely based on using brand new equipment, which is expensive, whereas in fact should be able to reduce the capital cost a lot by using good quality used equipment, which is widely available in the area, and we're currently sourcing that, so we can save some money there. No doubt we'll spend it somewhere else, but there's a project to be had there. But then we actually had some other quite good news, because we had a field trip in the summer, and our geologist on site walked all the spoil heaps. Now, we reckoned from the maps we had that we had 38 spoil heaps. They covered a surface area of about 5,000 square meters. By the time he'd finished, he'd actually found 51 spoil heaps, and they covered about 14,000 meters. We haven't been able to measure the depth of them yet, so we can't do volumetrics, but just in surface area, we'd almost tripled the amount of spoil heaps we have. We can't guarantee they're all good or they're all accessible, but we have a bigger amount of material to play with than we thought when we went into the process, when we went into the whole thing. One of the things that has come out of the work with the metallurgist is that whereas we thought of pouring gold and silver in these remote locations through actually producing a final material, the metallurgist recommends that that would be a crazy thing to do because pouring gold and silver out in the middle of the desert, you've got to make sure you trust your own people who are doing it. You've probably got to have guards to guard the operation. Then you probably got to have guards to guard the guards, and the whole thing becomes a high security risk. So the recommendation that we're now working with is that we would produce a concentrate, which we would then sell to a refinery. Obviously, we wouldn't get so much money for it, but we would, on the other hand, have a much lower capital cost and a much simpler kind of operation. So at the moment, we're thinking in terms of literally trucking condensate to a refinery, assaying it and selling it at the refinery door, which would be a simpler operation and reduce our budget. So you can see we're playing around with all these alternatives, and that's what we've been working on for some time, and what we'll be working on this autumn and winter, full time really. The limiting factor in Mineral Jackpot is actually getting the material off the mountain. The material we got off the mountain in the first place came with a small tracked vehicle, which was a good way of doing it, but for high volumes, it would be really far too expensive. So we're looking at possibly having to do some road upgrading, which will be quite a big operation. It's not a very very lengthy road upgrade, but it might involve blasting into the side of a mountain. It's nothing we can't handle, but at the moment we've got a contractor preparing an estimate for it. We're coming up with a quote for doing it. It'll be quite a lot of money, but maybe that's the money we save on buying second-hand equipment may go on building a new road. Who knows? But that is something we have to deal with, because getting the material from site to process plant is at the moment the limiting factor, which is the thing that is occupying us most. But we will find a solution to this. Now to move to my next slide is this. I'm expanding now the precious metal processing to the OMCO mine. When we acquired OMCO, the Olympic Gold, none of us in the company had ever seen it. We'd read about it a lot, done a lot of work on it, and we'd had a local consultant do a due diligence report on it, which was extremely detailed and very good, and that was what made us go ahead. So it really wasn't until this year that we actually had our own people on the site. And of course, when you have your own people on the site, they look at things which maybe you don't get from the paperwork and the information of the public data and so forth. And one of the things we quickly realized is that we had a very large tailings heap from the OMCO mine, about 11,000 square meters. And to us, that didn't seem very interesting at the time, because we knew there was a tailings heap, but we assumed that it had been cyanide leached and was just junk. But when we actually looked at it more carefully, we found that it had not been cyanide leached. It had only had some limited flotation separation. And so that material has presumably, and we're pretty sure it has, a high quantity of precious metal gold, particularly of gold in the material, which we think can be recovered. Now, this is not a gravity separation job. This is a cyanide job. But it would be of a scale that it would probably be worth doing. We've taken samples and we put them into a lab, and we're waiting the usual lab story. We're waiting in a queue. We'll get some assay results fairly soon, which will tell us whether we've got some good grades of gold in there. We will then put the little coring rig on top of the tailings pile, just to drill into it and find how deep they are. Then we can do volumetrics to see how many thousands of tons of material we have there, but it's a lot. So this is another string to our processing bow. Well, you might say, yeah, but it's not the same as the gravity separation on Mineral Jackpot, and that's true. But there's a third element to this, which is really interesting too, which is that we've also found a stockpile. Now, a stockpile is not a spoil heap or tailings. A stockpile is material that has been mined for processing and never been processed. It's probably been sitting there for 70 or 80 years, and we think we can crush and gravity separate that and probably get some good yields from it. Early days, we don't really know that yet, but this is what we think we can do. And so we have the possibility of maybe combining, having a larger kind of gravity operation, maybe based at Olympic Gold, which is more accessible than Mineral Jackpot. And we have the possibility of expanding our operation to have a fairly large gravity separation operation and a fairly large cyanide leaching operation too. So this sort of adds more to the interests of processing. There's a lot of work to be done, early days on the new stuff, but we'll be working on it, and we will keep shareholders informed as we go along, because I think it is going to be very interesting. Now, my next slide really, that deals really with our operations, and my next slide really is just on funding the work program. We're publishing our half-year results on 30th September, which will set out the position, rather healthy position of our net current assets at the 30th of June. In early 2021, we raised £1 million in new equity to supplement our existing funds and also to provide the flexibility to extend our drill program as appropriate, which we're now planning to do. Drilling to date has been achieved under budget, and the current funds will should pay for the next phase of drilling, with the first phase of process plant for the spoiled heap material, and this also maintains the company. So we're looking clear now into the second half of 2022. I can tell you, give or take a few pounds, we have about £2 million in the bank as of today. So we're in a healthy position for a small company, and we shall conserve that and do the best, get the best possible value we can from that. This really is the final summary slide for this summary. Just really to summarize things you've already been told. We're prioritizing 3 out of many precious metal prospects. We have a next phase of drilling at a good planning stage. We have our projects ongoing to generate early revenues from reprocessing spoiled heaps and tailings. We're funded for our current program. We have target gold from 500,000 to 1.5 million ounces from all prospects, and we're looking for industry partners to develop our large copper resource. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is my presentation. And you have kindly sent in a number of questions, and I will deal with those next.
That's great. Brian, let me just jump in before you do so, and thank you very much indeed for updating investors this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while Brian takes a few moments to review investor questions submitted during the meeting, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard, and we will send you an email when that's ready for your review. I would also like to submit the following poll, and if you'd be so kind as to give that your attention, we would be most grateful, and apologies for not submitting that at the onset. And finally, I'd like to remind you that your feedback is important to the company, and as soon as this presentation has ended, you'll be redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. Brian, I haven't given you a long while, and I know that you had a considerable number of questions pre-submitted that did fall into particular categories or themes, and you've also received a number of questions throughout this presentation. So thank you firstly to all those investors that have shown such keen interest in the company. And perhaps, Brian, I could just hand back to you just to run through those questions, and where appropriate, if I could ask you to read out the question and give a response, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thanks, Mark. I've categorized these questions. I've kind of merged them together because a lot of them are the same. So if your question doesn't actually appear as a question, I'm hope it's certainly been considered and hopefully answered in the sort of merged, amalgamated Q&A that I put together. My first category is general questions, and the first question I had was: Rockhouse had initial resource estimate of to 25,000 to 75,000 ounces of gold. Will this estimate be officially reserved now that drilling has occurred? Not really. this wasn't actually a resource, it was a target. And at this stage, we're talking about targets and not calculated resources, so we probably won't change that. Had our results not been good, we might have had to downgrade the target, but they were good. So I think we're going to be leaving the target as it is. The next question I have said, where do you see the company in 12 months' time, and how will it have changed from today? Well, that's a sort of crystal ball question, and I think just in summary, I could take longer to answer this question or longer to think about it, but I haven't had that long to think about it. So what I would like to see Great Western doing is this time next year having done enough further drilling to have established a genuine gold or silver resource and be more in an appraisal rather than an exploration stage for gold on one or more of our prospects, moving into an appraisal stage. The second thing I'd like to see is a process plant become a reality rather than the concept. And the third thing I'd like to see is some good progress with the copper in partnership with a larger group. I hope that's helpful. The next question I had here is, what do you see the three biggest challenges that you face over the next 6 to 12 months? And I think the answer is fairly easy to that. It's COVID, COVID, and COVID. And I hate to hide behind COVID, but unfortunately it's a reality. We managed very well last year to use contractors and to avoid all the problems of COVID. It was extremely effective. But the longer it goes on, the harder it is. And the situation at the moment is that contractor availability it's a very tight market because everyone's doing work they were supposed to do, they planned to do last year. So the market for all contractors is very, very tight. Plus the fact that there is quite a lot of COVID around now in the Mineral County area where they don't seem to be very in favor of vaccinations, which is rather a shame. So that causes the second problem, which is really local labor shortages. It's very hard to get labor to do things up there, to get anybody to do anything at the moment. It sounds stupid, but in McDonald's offers people $50 if they'll just go for an interview at the moment, and Amazon in Reno are offering large sign-on bonuses to anyone who will go and work in their warehouse. So you can imagine that just getting people to do simple jobs is hard. And the third thing, which is the third challenge, big challenge for us really at the moment, which we hope will ease soon, is transatlantic travel restrictions for our team. Our senior geologist is leaving on Wednesday. I have to tell you, he's going to spend 2 weeks in quarantine in a hotel in Vancouver before he can travel to Nevada. And in the summer when he was out there, he had to spend 2 weeks in a hotel in Mexico City. He works away quite happily in the hotel and everything, but we need to move people around all the time, and the restrictions are very hard. So those are our biggest challenges at the moment, and they're to some extent outside our control, but we do what we can with them. The next question I have is, are the board of directors now in a closed period? And the answer is yes. We're always in a closed period within 60 days of announcing our financial results, which will be on September the 30th. So for August and September, we've been in a closed period. The next question, I've merged two questions. And the first question was, why have there been so few investor updates? And the other was, very happy with updates this year, and the company communication has been good. So there seem to be some conflicting opinions here. I was a little bit surprised to see that there have been so few investor updates, so I did a little rough tally, and I reckon that this year we have put out a meaningful operational update on average every 17 days. And where we haven't put one out, it's because we haven't had anything to say, because we're sometimes in the dark ourselves. So I think every 17 days is not a bad average. So I was a little bit disappointed by that question. Next question: do you feel more can be done to promote the company to gain interest, and will there be an increase in PR this year? Well, of course, there's more we can do, and indeed today's session is one of the steps we're taking to improve communications. And we have other ideas in the pipeline, and we hope to do more of these with Investor Meet Company as well. So we are conscious of that. We are working on it. It's always easy to bash the poor old PR man because PR is such an intangible profession. But I've worked with probably a dozen PR firms over the decades, and I'm actually very happy with Walbrook, whose role is anyway being expanded this year. So we're doing what we can, and we're working on improving our communications. How likely are we to get a small regular stream of revenue from the spoil heaps before any further needs to raise, before the company needs to raise more money? I wish I could answer this, and I can't really, because just there are so many moving parts in all this. But I would just say that our overall aim is to minimize shareholder dilution and to fast track a producing operation which will generate revenue. So we're working on that, but which will happen first, I'm not really in a position to say at the moment, but we'll keep you informed. Next is how well is well funded, and will there be a share raise within the next 6 months? Well, as I say, we've got roughly 2 million in the bank at the moment. With our current program, we're certainly not looking to raise money in the next 6 months. If we expand the program, but I don't think we will be. I don't see us. I'm not going to put my hand on my heart and swear, but I don't see us needing to go back to the market in the next 6 months. I really don't. And finally, in this section, somebody asked, what is the outlook for the company? And 2 words, in my opinion anyway, very good. My next category is processing, and I have a lot of questions on this, which I've tried to merge into questions. I can't necessarily give answers, but good answers, but I'll do my best. Could you give us some detailed information on this important matter, being the processing? Well, I think I've done this already today and explained what we're trying to do on the processing, and there's quite a lot about it in the presentation. But what I can say is that you can expect regular news flow over the next few months as to what we're doing, because we're going to gear this up now to quite a large extent. Then somebody has asked, there seems to have been a doré bar production expectation last year from tailings, and an update on this process would be appreciated. Well, yes, we did produce a small doré bar, but I think you already have the update this afternoon. Could you share more details on a rough best guess date for the process project? I'm afraid the answer to that is no. If I give a long date, which would be safe, you'll be very unhappy. And if I give a short date, I'll be proved wrong, and then you'll be very unhappy again. So I think I really want, I'm sorry to prevaricate on this, but I really don't want to give a date on when we start up the process project. There are just too many different things being fed into it at the moment. Next question, how good is the current road infrastructure? Is it able to accommodate the amount of spoiled heaps to be processed and able to access them? Do we have the funds and or plans to upgrade them if needed? Well, this is a very apt question, which I've partly dealt with. The road is not good. The road needs a few hundred meters of blasting and upgrading. We do certainly have the money to do it. And if we need to do it, we will. So this is something that is in our thinking, but that's a very appropriate question. My next section is copper. Would you consider spinning the copper project out to another smaller company, or even its own listing, to allow that to progress, while at the same time allowing the company to focus on the core gold silver projects? Well, this is certainly an option, but it's worth pointing out that copper is a big boy's long-term game, which is why we've switched the relatively more short-term precious metal side. And I really think we should be looking for a big company to do this rather. If it was gold and silver, I'd say yes, we could maybe do some sort of corporate transaction, but I think we need to find a seriously large mining company to develop the copper and do it seriously. Next question, has there been any further interest from a potential partner for the copper, and is there any serious interest from a major player? Well, several large companies have the basic details of our copper projects, and in one case we know our project has been passed up the line, but big companies don't express interest until they're ready. And so the answer, I'm afraid, is that we don't have any serious interest from a big company, but we're working on it, and we hope to get that. Will more work need to be done to have more serious impact on generating interest? Yes, I think it probably would, and drilling the intercept on M4 is being done with that in mind. We previously said that 2 companies expressed interest and we haven't made a deal with them. And the question is, why were the interested parties turned down? Well, the reason we didn't do deals with them, we saw them both as being less well-funded and smaller and weaker than us, and looking to rely on our own operations personnel to do the heavy lifting for them on some sort of contract basis. So there really wasn't much point. So we might as well have done it ourselves. And as I said earlier, copper is a big boys game, and we need a partner who can deploy substantial resources and cash and expertise to move this forward. And that's what we're going for. Do you have an update on the drilling progress at M2 and M4? Well, we've got no drilling planned at M2 at the moment, but as we've already said, we hope to drill M4 this autumn or next spring. With the price of copper on the rise, will the company now be more focused on copper as well as the gold and silver projects? Well, a new copper mine takes years to develop, and we're still only exploring at this stage. So we've never lost our focus on copper, and our copper asset is a potentially valuable resource. But short-term resource prices don't really drive our day-to-day strategy on copper, because it's just so long-term. So I think our approach will still be the same: to find a big company to go to take this forward. We're now on drilling, which is, of course, a big issue, but only a very small number of questions. And this is a key question. What remaining drilling will occur in 2021? I wish I knew. We are absolutely ready to drill. Not completely ready. We're still waiting on the permits to come through, which will be probably in the next 2 weeks or so. But they're applied for, and there'll be no problem with that. But right now, when we started drilling, we got in early in the year. We had a very effective drilling campaign. But right now, the drillers are all very busy. And the nearest comparison, and really nobody is signing up anything for this year. But in the nature of things, people's plans don't always work out. I put us a little bit for the remainder of this year. I'm now putting us in the category of a standby passenger on an airline who's waiting for the no-shows before they let him on. And you do get no-shows. People change their minds for drilling and so forth. But we are struggling a little bit, and this is one of the three issues that someone asked me about. That actually, contractor availability is becoming a problem, partly because nothing was done during the COVID period and early COVID period, and now everybody is working flat out. So it is a difficult issue, and I can't guarantee. We're hoping to drill in 2021. We plan to. We're ready to, but I can't guarantee, and we're financed to do it. But I really can't guarantee we will. Time frame for results to receive regarding M4 drilling. Well, this is, of course, a copper question. Entirely depends on obtaining a tracked rig. We have the tracked rig identified. We're in the queue to work for it. We'll just have to see. It'll be late this year, early next year. And finally, I've got a category, which was a late-coming category, which was, does the company still hold any acreage for the potential for mining uranium? Well, yes, we do hold the acreage that contains uranium, and indeed lots of other minerals. Our local authority is not called Mineral County for nothing. Some years ago, there was a bit of long before my time, there was a flurry of interest in uranium, and it was a possible avenue for the company, but it didn't really come to anything. Uranium is dangerous. It's a strategic material, and it's subject to incredibly tough government controls in the US and just about everywhere. It may well be a resource for the future, but frankly, we're not pursuing uranium. We've got plenty to do on gold and silver and copper, and we're not pursuing a uranium avenue at the moment. Well, those are the questions I've received. I don't see if there is any other questions on the screen.
Yeah, so Brian, on the right-hand side, if you could just open the
here we go. Yeah, here we are. Here we go. I'm seeing a question here. It says, are you partnershiping with an experienced gold miner to get the gold out of the ground? If so, when will this be? Well, I think the answer to that question is no. We're doing it ourselves. We've got an experienced team, and I think I've probably done what I can. We will, to get the gold out of the ground. So I've already said that there will be. A gold mine doesn't happen overnight, which is why we are hoping to accelerate revenues with spoiled heat material and so forth. But so when will this be? As soon as we can. But no, the answer is we're not proposing to go into partnership with an experienced gold miner. We think we've probably got the right experience in-house to do this. Okay, what has caused the share price to drop sharply when the results have been good? That's a question I've asked myself lots of times. I wish I knew. It's always a question that people ask the company, but actually, you put out a good result and the price goes down. It's extraordinary. It's just I don't really know the answer. The only answer I can assume, this is really a question for the market more than the company. The only answer I can assume is that somebody says, well, the news is out and there probably isn't going to be much more news for a while, so now I'll sell a few. But I don't really know. It did take us a long time. We drilled ahead of schedule. It did take us a long time to get the results out. It wasn't because of us, it's because the labs were so busy and we just couldn't get the results out of the lab. So there was a rather long gap before the results came out, but I thought the results were pretty encouraging myself, and I didn't expect to see the price slip away like that. So I'm afraid I just don't know the answer to that. With just those two questions, Mark, I don't think there are any others.
Yeah, there's a few more. If you just scroll up to the top, you'll see it starts with a question from no problem at all. There's plenty of interest there, sir. So yeah, I'll leave the floor to you if I may.
Okay. The slides reference next holes to be drilled. Do you have contractors signed up? I think I've just answered that. We're all set to drill it in 2021. As I said, we're an airline passenger on a standby at the moment because everybody is just busy in a way that they haven't been in living memory at the moment out there. So we don't have a contract signed up. We hope to use the same contract because they're extremely good. They did a really, really good job, O'Keefe Drilling, and we hope to use them again. But they know we want them. But all their crews are just solid busy right now. Then another question: does this cover all the next phase drilling across the acreage in this first slide? I'm sorry. Does this cover all the next phase drilling? Yeah, I think so. I mean, these things always get flexed a little bit, but I think the slide does cover the drilling we're planning. Yes, we might even reduce it a little bit. Depends on the results, but yeah, that pretty much covers everything. Do you think you'll be able to get the second phase of drilling completed before winter sets in? I wish I knew. When do you have to have the permits come back to give the go-ahead? I expect to get the permits any time now. They've been in for a couple of weeks. I expect they normally say 2 weeks to a month. The last lots were 2 weeks. I would expect to get the permits any time, but it's not the permits. As I say, we have the money, we have the drill locations, we have the geologists traveling to the States right now, and we will have the permits, but without a rig, we're going to be a little bit stuck. This has taken the whole industry a bit by surprise. There are so many different projects being managed simultaneously for which the company and board should be commended. Thank you. My question is, what value would you place on the company if, say, half the prospects were proved successful in terms of the target resources? Well, I would hope a great deal more than now. We have, for the amount of things we have going on, and particularly the amount of good acreage we have, we're a low cap, very low cap company, very small cap company. But then I would say that, wouldn't I? I mean, nobody running a company ever says my shares are worth much less than this. But I mean, I think they're worth it, and I have my own investment in the company, which I'm very confident of, and what it will be if everything proves successful. I think if everything proves successful, it'd be very high, but realistically, everything won't prove successful. It never does. But we've got a sufficiently broad spread that something will. On phase two, on phase. I think I'm looking at the same one. Yeah. On phase two, how confident are you that this will be underway this side of the season? Medium confident, I would say, on that. Not highly confident. It's as I've just explained. And then, do the current results still support the target of? Do the current results still support the target of 0.5 to 1.5 ounces gold to achieve that will be need to raise further funds in the short term, 2022? Yes, I think they do. I mean, but the target, as I say, the target is a target. But yes, I think they do. I think our results have been. I think the results have been very encouraging. I was expecting to get a mixed bag, and I thought it was rather better than that. Next one: what does Gemma do for the company? You brought her on for a reason. She has lots of experience, etc. But what does she see in the company that made her join? Well, that's a question for her, I guess. But Gemma is an experienced geologist. She's a geology manager of Greatland Gold, which is a very successful company. She's got a very good. She also manages Starvest, which is a mining investment company. But I think she saw it as an interesting story with lots of prospects. I imagine that's what brought her on. I've never actually grilled her. I was so pleased to have someone with her experience. She's a non-executive director, but she supports us a lot. She's kind of a long stop on what we do. So when our geologists come and sit, she will review things. She doesn't have any executive role, but she's been extremely useful. And what she sees in the company, I think she sees it as a nice story that she'd like to be associated with. And I'm speaking for her. I shouldn't do that. Are you looking to add more personnel to your team? Yes, but we're looking. We'll have an appointment coming up fairly soon, I hope. But we're not going to overman ourselves. We're going to keep to a core team and use consultants. In relation to the PR side of things, do you think the lack of PR has a part to play in why the reaction is somewhat negative? Well, you see, I don't really buy the lack of PR. I mean, the trouble is, ideally, a PR company will get you stuff in the print media every day of the week. In real life, for a small company, it's very hard to do that. We've been put in front of several journalists, some of whom you would know, and they all say interesting story. One day we'll write about it. But actually getting, for a small company, actually getting the print media to take a serious interest is quite a difficult undertaking. So I never blame the poor PR man, because they do what they can. And as I say, we're trying to build up the PR side of things with things like today's event and other events we'll do. We're signed on to Proactive, as you know, and we do those fairly frequently. And we've got a number of things to do. The share price is something. We can control to some extent what happens in the field. We can't control what happens on a day to day in the market. It's just something that we have to work away at the company and try and get good results, and then hope that the market will understand them and behave accordingly. But we can't really do a lot day to day about the results.
Brian, I might.
Oh, well, that's somebody says we're doing.
Yeah, not a question, just saying you're doing a cracking job and got faith in your abilities and what you can do. I think, Brian, that does conclude most of the questions. In fact, all of the questions that have been submitted. So thank you for being so generous with your time. Obviously, we're coming up to the hour. Investor feedback is important to you, and I'll shortly redirect investors to provide you feedback. But before doing so, Brian, perhaps I could just ask you for a few closing comments, and then I will redirect investors.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you very much for your questions. And I'll just leave you with one thought. Many small cap exploration companies like Great Western depend on a single prospect, and their success hangs on that prospect. We have a lot of excellent acreage, and if none of the multiple prospects we're currently busy with works out, which I would see as highly unlikely, we have other prospects to work on which we haven't even scratched the surface of yet. So on that note, I will wish you all a good day, and thank you so much for participating in this, and I hope we will have an opportunity to talk to you again before too long. Thank you.
Brian, thank you once again for updating investors. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that Brian and the management team can really better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Great Western Mining Corporation PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, and good afternoon to you all.